Can we talk about the public in regards to foreign policy? We've discussed about how usually the people as a whole follow the president's lead in foreign affairs. But can we talk about, perceptions of American foreign policy, what factors influence public opinion? Get into that.
Well, right there, the main problem is essentially that the public obviously elects the president, electoral college. Some people say he doesn't, but they do. And they're generally very much behind the president. So in foreign policy, the actions always seem fairly concrete. So that obviously the public likes that, and the public has shown that it likes simple decisions, even with a complex problem. So even when a president might propose something that would seem out of hand or too simple, such as the invasion of Afghanistan or the invasion of Iraq, when facts got in the way, the public still supported the measures, just because it seemed like something was being done.
Because, it's supported at the time by, if we're in a crisis situation, I'm sure that, like after 9/11, that obviously would influence the public into being more gung-ho for going to war.
Hoorah.
Hoorah. So,
Definitely.
I'm sure that.
Nothing unites America like a crisis. And although not exactly a crisis, the Republican Party was represented by George W. Bush in the election. Well, not in the election, but in the previous 8 years. And that's almost caused a crisis-like scenario from the American public in making overwhelming support for Obama.
Sure.
So you feel that because, as the war went on, public opinion kind of wavered on the decision to go to war.
After 9/11, George W. Bush had overwhelming support, and then as the war dragged on and
The
became...
costs became apparent.
Yeah, the cost became apparent, and the public changed their perception slowly to almost the other side, and that just caused not a lack of support for the war, but a lack of support for the president who put us in the situation.
Dealing with cleavages in public opinion, different interest group politics, how do you feel that influences the perception of what the president decides, what Congress decides, in dealing with foreign affairs? And also, talk about the media a little bit.
Well, there's always differences in public opinion. I mean, that's about as true as anything you can get in politics. But the key thing there is that in any instance in history, when a crisis has presented a clear program of action, things have changed. Like after before Pearl Harbor, 94% of Americans wanted to stay isolationist and stay out of the war in Europe, which at that time was going on. After Pearl Harbor, almost the entire nation was ready to go to war. I mean, that's such a huge difference. So a crisis can definitely change how the public perceives things. And almost always, the crisis ends up supporting the president, because the public likes to see a strong, clear leader in those cases.
And it may not even be a crisis of huge magnitude. The media has a big part in the perception, because it's not what is actually happening, it's the Americans perceiving what is happening, which is important. And the media has a stronghold on America as almost portraying government as a lying body, and the media has great power over the public in America.
Do you feel that the defense budget, how it's allocated, can you talk about that a little bit? Josh, I know you're our resident expert.
Well, the defense budget is allocated in... The government almost does it in a sneaky way, because Americans feel in general that the budget for defense is too much. So the government tries to hide it almost. This right here is the actual budget, not including trust funds like Social Security, which are completely separate. This is where your taxes are going. And over half is the defense budget. This is past military. This is the current military. About 10% of the total budget is going to Iraq and Afghanistan right now. And this is actuality, and this is what America would rather perceive. This is thrown in, bunch of stuff, Social Security, Medicare. This is what the government shows the public, and defense is 20%, but it's way more important, as you can see by the upside down graph right now, but it's given utmost importance to the government, but the public perception is not there yet, so they try to like downplay it.
Now, a lot of people may have seen those bumper stickers that have the pie graph on them, and they show the massive chunk that the government gives to defense appropriations.
The defense budget of, let's see this graph. You can hold this up. This is a representation of the defense budget of the United States. It's a little over, it's around $520 billion a year. This is for 2006, so it's probably a little more by now. And over here is stacked on top of each other the defense budget of the next 16 leading countries in spending power on defense. China's down here like 100 billion, a little bit more, and this is almost absurd to think of how much money is spent on defense, and it just shows how active the U.S. is in foreign relations and going to other countries and interventionism. And not counting, we're not counting a lot. We're not counting every other country that isn't these 16 right here, but if you do count every country with a defense budget, America would still take up 47% of that pie chart in defense budget.
What is being done in the current Obama administration, at least comparatively with the previous Bush administration, in allocations with defense budget? What's going where, and how does it, set a precedent for defense and foreign policy spending in Obama's administration?
Well, President Bush's idea was basically to just spend, spend, spend. There was never enough money going to the military, to them. That would supply conventional warfare and non-conventional warfare like guerrilla warfare, what we have facing us in Iraq and Afghanistan now, the insurgencies. The amount of money going was absolutely insane, and we were still in debt because of it. But now, President Obama is taking a different tack, and he's trying to prepare at the same time for these insurgencies, but scale back on these conventional warfare ideas and some of the more futuristic combinations of warfare. So really what we're trying to do now in defense budget appropriations is focus more on the troops we have facing the insurgency right now. What do they need, and not what will we need to fight the next conventional war.